Okay, back again with part two of building instruction for the fire officer. Just to recap, in part one we talked about uh, types of building construction, occupancy, loads, and a few other items. So today we're going to concentrate on type 5 construction, commonly referred to as wood frame. Again, we're following the Brannigan building construction series. So for the class, we're using Brannigan's Volume 4. If you have Volume 3 or Volume 2, that'll work just fine. So again, um, class is based on building instruction for fire officers. Uh, it's intended for the fire officer to gain knowledge in respect to strategy and tactics, and how building construction needs to be an integral part of your incident action plan. So again, going back to the structural members, I've been referring to them as the bones of the building, and there is a hierarchy in structural members. So when we're dealing with wood frame, we need to undress the building and have an understanding and know terminologies of some of the structural members. So when we talk about this on the fire ground and we have an assignment, our members understand what you know we're asking them to do. So rafters, rafters hold up the roof. So in a wood frame building, uh, we normally use the term rafter for a roof assembly, um, something that's holding up the roof. And normally when we say rafters, they're usually on a pitched roof versus a flat roof. If we had a flat roof, a lot of times we just call them roof joists. So ceiling joists, another terminology. Um, that's what we nail the sheetrock to, the um, ceiling material goes onto ceiling joists. Studs, they're basically the columns of our building, our wood frame building. We talked about columns, in the first part one. Um, Columns carry the weight of the building down through the building, down to the foundation. So studs are columns in our wood frame construction. Sill plate in Western platform construction. If we have floors, we have what we call a sill plate. So the stud goes down to the sill plate, um, and then the load is transferred down to studs below, or in this case, or if it's a single floor, the studs transfer the load to the sill plate, which transfers the load to the foundation. And again, first floor joists, and if we have a single story building, we just have one set of floor joists. Two basic types of wood frame construction that can impact tactics and strategy are platform frame and balloon frame. So you can break it up into two different types. You have platform frame or a balloon frame building. Again, depending on what part of the country you live in, one type of construction can be more prominent than another. If you get older sections of older towns, older cities, there may be more balloon frame construction in the older sections than platform frame. So again, it all depends on when the building was built and what part of the country you're in as far as the type of construction that was prevalent at that time. So the big thing is platform frame provides fire stopping between floors, whereas the balloon frame construction, there's little to no fire stopping between the floors. So in this slide here on the left, you can see the this would be the interior wall of a balloon frame construction. The outer sheathing has been removed. So if we go over to the right, it gives you a little better optic here. The open stud bays. they run from the basement to the attic. Um, here's the open bays. So these studs run all the way from the attic, the basement, all the way up to the attic, and then they're covered with some type of sheathing. In this case, some type of clapboard. There may or may not be insulation inside the bays, depending on when the building was built. Some of the pros and cons of balloon frame construction. We're dealing, in most cases, with dimensional lumber, right? Uh, True 2x4, 2x6 lumber. It's going to burn for a long time before it yields its strength and collapses. The the con is undetectable fire spread. A fire in the basement can travel undetected up the stud bay to the first, second floor, up into the attic space. So some questions to ask regarding factors in incident planning by the incident commander for fires in balloon frame construction. One of the first questions you need to know in developing your incident action plan is what floor is the fire in the building? Right? Is it in the basement? If it's in the basement, it's a worst case scenario because we said with the open studs, if the fire gets into the stud cavity, the stud wall, it's going to spread all the way up to the attic space, possibly without you knowing it. Uh, Attic is a better case scenario because the fire is located in the highest part of the building, so less less of the building is threatened by fire. Okay, where in the house is the fire? Possible room designation. Is it in a kitchen? Is it in a bedroom? Is it in the back part of the house? So again, knowing where the fire is so you can direct the forces is a big part of your incident action planning. What's the fuel? Okay, is it a room and contents fire or is it oriented to structural elements? Again, uh, room and contents, you may get an easy knockdown. Once it gets into the structural elements, uh, now you start to have compromise of the building structure and eventually possible collapse of elements of the building. What's the life hazard use? Are there exposures? What's your water supply? What resources are you going to need? These are all things to contemplate when you're putting together an incident action plan for fire in a balloon frame structure or any type of wood frame structure. Building construction needs to be a factor in your incident action plan at all times. So in this case, we have a engine company operating a basement fire in a balloon frame constructed building. So what's our engine company deployment, right? How much water do I need for the fire flow? Is everybody familiar with the fire flow formula from the National Fire Academy? So you're going to need at least the first line into the basement. If the fire starts in the basement, line's got to go into the basement. Again, talking about the open stud bays, you need to get the brothers in there. Line may need to go to the attic. So first line into the basement, second line may need to go right to the attic for a fire extension. You need a second and third line on the first floor. Again, fire extension up the stud bays. You need a second line to the fourth, another line to the second floor for fire extension. Ladder company assignments, right? So use your local procedure for truck work if there's no dedicated ladder companies. So if you only deal with engine companies in your area, truck work still has to be done. So you need to know what type of truck operations are going to be necessary. Forcible entry, you're going to need guys pulling ceilings, pulling walls, opening up stud bays, that type of thing. Right, assign ladder companies as needed to conduct searches, forcible entry, provide access to hidden spaces. And open up the exterior walls to allow a nozzle to be directed up the stud bay. Platform frame buildings. Conventional platform frame uses dimensional lumber for floor joists and rafters. Fire stopping is built into the construction style. Um, you're going to see 2x6 and 2x8 rafters allow for roof operations. Lightweight wood frame. Big issue over the past 20 years in the fire service. The bones of the building, they're lightweight wood frame construction. There's not a lot of substance, not a lot of meat to the material. It's not going to burn for a long time before it collapses. Not a lot of extra material that can be given up and still maintain its strength. Some of the big elements in lightweight wood frame construction are wood I-beams, commonly referred to as TJIs. This is a trade name, and they're used for floor joists and rafters. We also have parallel cord trusses used for floor joists and rafters on flat roofs. They're also found commonly as floor joists in wood frame building, and you're also going to find them in type 3 ordinary construction. Metal gusset plates. I think by now everybody should be familiar with metal gusset plates, but when we talk about truss construction, that's how the truss members are, for the most part, held together. There's other connection types. Some truss members are glued, splined together, but the metal gusset plates are pressed into the wood members to create the truss. The plate digs into the wood, and those nailers, they call them gang nailers, they only penetrate the wood about 3/8 of an inch. Here is a typical roof truss system used in lightweight wood frame, single family and multi-family dwellings. Again, these are called gang nailers, and they're just pressed into the truss members about 3/8 of an inch. Under fire conditions, these things will just fall out, and then you'll have a truss members fail, and you have at least localized collapse. Not to mention all this wood up here, there's a lot of surface area, very little substance to the wood. So it's going to burn rapidly, and it's going to collapse rapidly. So lightweight wood frame construction. Can you tell which building is a lightweight building? Okay, that's a lightweight building. How about this one over here? Yeah, lightweight building. It's made to look like ordinary construction. The stucco on the side to make it look like it's stone. Over here, lightweight building. How about the McDonald's? Most McDonald's that I come across, they're wood frame buildings. Big thing about the McDonald's and the Burger Kings, a lot of these other fast food restaurants, is they're basically throwaway buildings. If you get a fire in one of these establishments, you can pretty much be certain that before the fire's out, McDonald's is already making plans to build a new building. So unless there's a life hazard involved, no sense in risking firefighter lives to save this building. There's nothing to save. It's just going to be demolished, and it's going to be rebuilt. So again, there's no life hazard. There's no civilian life hazard. We become a life hazard. Burger King, I think I already said that. It's a lightweight building. Fridays, I know there's a Fridays in my town. I watched them build it. It's all wood frame. Over here we have a garden apartment. Wood frame. Next to it, another set of apartments, older apartments. They may not be lightweight construction, but they're wood frame buildings. I mentioned something earlier in part one about townhouses. So again, newer townhouses, lightweight construction, 2-hour fire separation wall between them. So between units, there's 2-hour fire separations. Going back to the part one slide I had, with the 2-hour fire separation, we're using a gypsum board up here, which is creating fire separation between units. However, you always have to assume that it's compromised. Someone has come through, a piece has been left out, there's been holes put in the gypsum to run communication wiring in the attic space, um, things like that. So assume that we have compromise of the fire separation walls. And with the going back to the 2-hour separation for townhouses, if it's a sprinklered townhouse, then it only requires 1-hour separation. Okay, here's a townhouse fire, and I told you in part one that there's an Achilles heel to townhouse construction. And again, depending on where you come from, we call it townhouses. Some people may call it row frames, cylinder brownstones, all wood construction, all dwelling units. They may take up an entire block, all attached. Right? So attached multifamilies. So in this case, we've rolled up on this fire. And if you again take a look at the smoke over here, so from incident commander reading the smoke, you got to see that this fire is already traveling. It's taking off. We got a line in operation. So crews are getting set up in this picture. Take a look over here where I have circle. We can see a crew going in, and this is going to be exposure 3, right? 3 Bravo 3, I believe. Now the reason they're going in there is because I rolled up on this. I got a good 360. I could see where it was going, and I had the one engine company. I said, listen, you got to get a line up to the 3rd floor. Start pulling ceilings on the 3rd floor. Try to save at least the exposure, and you'll see why in a couple of minutes. So again, here's the fire progression. This was again, the companies were still getting set up when this picture was taken. So here's the rear of the building. Fire starts on the deck, back of the unit. Points of entry, the eaves and the overhang, and the slider, right? So it started as a smoking material out on the rear deck. So here's the Achilles heel. Townhouse construction, row frame, all right, vented soffit to the exposure units. So the original fire, this is the exposure building over here. The original fire building is further over. Fire travels up the outside, starts lapping, gets into the soffit, right? The soffit is not rated. There's no fireproofing material in here. It's open for ventilation, and that's a spot where the flames started entering the units. So this is a picture from the exposure 3, where I had that engine company take a line up to the 3rd floor. So they started pulling the ceilings in the bedroom up here, and you can see the fire started entering through the soffit. So the picture we just looked at, so right here, the picture that we're looking at on the next slide is this is the outside, and you're on the inside looking. All that black fire staining is from this out here. So it started coming, here's the fire separation wall into the other unit. The fire just did an end around the fire separation wall and started coming in the soffit. This is a duct for a dryer that it's vented out into the soffit. I mentioned earlier that sometimes with the fire separations, again, some stuff gets missed. This is just a picture that I showed in part one, but here is the exposure building over here. This piece of sheetrock was missed, most likely during construction. However, you can see the fire did not enter. This is the front of the building. The fire didn't enter into this attic space yet. It was coming in from the back. So again, the crews got in there, pulled the ceilings, and they were able to extinguish any fire extension into this unit. So we held the fire to the original fire building and the exposure building. Okay, this is the original fire building. Fire started out here on the deck. All right, went into the exposure over here, and then it started to lap into B2, exposure B Bravo 2 over here. So once the fire is outside of the protective envelope of the building, breaches the sheetrock, goes out the windows, exterior building, you have to expect extension into other units. You can see the remnants of the sheathing or the fire separation wall here, the sheetrock. And again, the fire went up, did an end around, got into the soffits, got up into the attic space, and it started burning its way down. So this is a fatal fire that we recently responded to, and we're just going to pose some questions once we hear this lady, one of the eyewitnesses.
Video captured by neighbors on 15th Street and Toms River show the flames as they ravaged this home.
Okay, so this is pretty much on arrival. Basically a well-involved, lightweight wood frame building. So you're the incident commander. You got to ask yourself some questions. You got to develop an incident action plan. So where do you put your first line? Okay, what is my first line? Hopefully not 1 3/4, 2.5, some type of deck gun, tower ladder, right? You got reports now that the exposures are starting to light up. Water supply. Do you have the water supply? You may, in this case, forego putting water on the original fire building and start putting water on the exposures until you can get more resources on location and get more points of more hydrants involved, a larger water supply going. All these issues need to be part of your instant action plan. It's things you have to think about under the worst case scenario. This fire is moving very rapidly. It's extending not only to the left and to the right, it's also exposing structures in the rear. And then we're talking about brands flying to other areas of the block. So there's a lot going on here, and the incident commander in this fire was a young captain, and he did an outstanding job. Span of control. Again, he was able to get span of control. He was able to get sector officers assigned um, divisions assigned and route resources to those sectors and let the sectors utilize those resources as they saw fit. And just remember, building construction, fire behavior, weather conditions, and all other size up and fireground factors cannot be studied in a vacuum. Don't forget the enemy, in this case the fire, gets a vote. All right, so continuing on with wood frame construction, um, just another fire building that we had. This could be wood frame, it could be considered ordinary, again, uh, depending on what camp you're in. But the original fire, so a store fire, started on the first floor, rear of the store, and extended up a open chase to the attic. Now this is a very old building, predominantly wood frame, um, built back in the 20s, 30s. So old construction, dimensional lumber, a lot of construction in there over the years, a lot of concealed spaces. So again, this is what it looked like out on the street. Fire took control of the cockloft or the attic space and burned predominantly up into the attic space. And access to the seat of the fire, again, God puts roofs on buildings for a reason, keep the rain out. So if the roof is still on the building, you're not going to get to the seat of the fire with an aerial ladder. So sometimes you have to wait for the fire to burn through. Um, the only other option here is if you're going to put firefighters on a roof to operate with some type of cockloft nozzle, some type of distributor nozzle, or you're going to work underneath, pull ceilings, try to get water up into the cockloft space or the attic space. Again, that's all based on the experience of your department, how your department does business. I'm not here to tell you should do it, you shouldn't do it. But again, just have an understanding that we have access issues and fire in the cockloft, and I see far too many times aerial apparatus used where the roof is still on the building and we're just wasting water. In the original fire occurred, the first due ladder went to the roof to vent. So the fire was still inside the store. Line started pushing in the front door. First due ladder went to the roof to vent, but when they put the ladder down for the crew to start exiting the bucket, they broke the waterway on the parapet right here. So that first due tower ladder had to be removed from service, and additional tower ladder had to be special called to take up that position. But from reports of the firefighters that were in the bucket, um, experienced firefighter said that it appeared that the fire was already extending, well into the cockloft. So the outcome may not have changed if they could have got to the roof with that first due ladder. This is what it looked like. Fire started in the rear of the store, extended up the open chase to the attic space. No draft stopping, right? It was built before the current fire codes. You can see the heavy timber truss, all right? Just another angle. Again, good picture of this heavy timber wood truss. And they just collapsed. Getting a lot of fire up here. This would be considered an attic space, cockloft space. But again, a lot of fire, difficult to get to. Building was not occupied, so the incident commander didn't want to endanger firefighters, so it was an exterior operation. All right, wood frame construction in apartments, garden apartments. Here's an older style garden apartment. There may be no separations in the attic space. So if you get a fire into the attic space, it could come across that entire space. The older garden apartments also have basements for storage and laundry. So uh, many times the laundry is found in the basement in these older style apartment complexes. I've been to a number of fires, especially dryer fires that take place down in the laundry below grade. So again, fire starts in the basement, difficult situation. Um, Got to make a push down the stairs, tough to ventilate, um, smoky conditions. So just things to take into account when you're developing your incident action plan. Older style garden apartment. Again, I think we showed this in part one. Here we can see fire separations. More than likely they're block walls that go all the way up through the building, through the attic space. In this instance, there's an apartment on the second floor, an apartment on the first floor. So pretty well separated. The units are pretty well separated. The siding, a brick veneer siding, so not combustible. Fire gets on the outside of the building. It's not going to be a fuel package to extend fire up from the siding material into the exposure, into the soffit. Even fire venting out the slider here is more than likely not going to get up into the soffit around that firewall in these type of buildings. Siding, we talked about siding. So here's a brick veneer siding. And brick veneer is not structural. The bricks are attached to the wall sheathing by metal L brackets. Over time, the brackets can rust and detach from the sheathing. Um, Brick veneer can also be misinterpreted as ordinary construction. So guys see the brick, they think it's a block wall. It's not. It's just a fake wall. It's a curtain wall. It's hung on the wood siding. Sheathing, vinyl siding. Again, when exposed to radiant heat and direct flame contact, it can ignite. Flaming vinyl can drip and extend fire to more siding. Newer polypropylene siding in building code world requires at least a 10-foot separation distance between structures on building lots. So um, this vinyl siding, polypropylene siding is another fuel that you have to deal with, especially if your buildings are built close together. You're going to could get fire extension into another building through the siding. This building was 30 feet away from the original fire building, and you can see the damage on the vinyl siding. Okay, residential sprinklers. Residential sprinklers are designed to protect the occupants. NFPA 13R for multifamilies, NFPA 13D for 1 and 2 single-family dwellings. The sprinklers in residentials only cover the occupied spaces, and it's a life safety device. It's there to extinguish a fire in the incipient stage and to give residents time to evacuate the building. A fire starting outside of the protective envelope can result in catastrophic fire. I believe this is a picture from the Edgewater fires in New Jersey. Again, fire started outside of protective envelope, got up into the attic space, got a good headway before fire suppression forces were able to get there. They couldn't get a handle on it. The building construction was not in their favor. The sprinklers, again, were only covering the residential living areas, so they weren't, once the fire was into the walls and up into the attic space, um, really didn't do any good. So just be mindful, just because you have a residential building that's sprinklered, it's only covering the occupied spaces. Fire starts outside, a mulch fire on the outside of the building, gets into the siding, gets into the wall structure. Um, that sprinkler system isn't going to be much help to extinguish the fire. There was a change to the 2018 building code. It now requires sprinkler protection to be carried up into the attic, into combustible spaces in the attic. So that's going to be a plus for any new construction starting in 2018, 2019. So some takeaways, some tactical points to consider. Dimensional lumber will give you more time and options over lightweight construction once the fire attacks the structure. So again, you need to get out there and inspect your buildings. Uh, know what buildings are built with conventional lumber. Uh, Try to get an idea of what the roof systems are. Are they rafters versus wood truss, right? If you don't know, treat it as a lightweight construction, all right? Again, we're talking about residential 1 and 2 family buildings, apartment buildings. Um, you need to identify survivable spaces that can be searched. You could pull up on a building and see a wall of fire, do your 360. You may have occupied spaces, bedrooms in the rear, that there's no fire. So you need to be able to identify survivable space that you can direct the brothers in to do a VES, VEIS search for life. And again, if you're dealing with buildings with residential sprinklers, they only protect the livable space. All right, so here's my information. You have any questions, you can contact me. Um, Next section will be part 3 for our building construction for the fire officer class. Thanks for watching.